Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross. In the studio this evening to help me analyse the day's events is Day Tucker, who is a Rural Affairs spokesperson. Welcome to the programme again, Day.
Thank you.
Nice to have you back after your holiday.
Yes.
And also on Skype from, I believe, from Barcelona, I hope, is Pilar Fernandez. Welcome, Pilar. Thank you for joining us via the Skype link this evening. We'll be coming back to you just shortly. Okay, the main news this evening. We have parties in Holyrood's Finance and Constitution Committee have finally come together to endorse the principles of a referendum's Scotland Bill, currently progressing through the Scottish Parliament. The committee has said that it unanimously supports the objectives of the referendum's bill, provided that the bill is amended to reflect the evidence it has received. The Referendum Scotland Bill will provide a legal framework for the holding of referendums on any matters within the Scottish Parliament's control, and take steps to progress the debate on Scotland's future in light of Brexit. The SNP MSP Tom Arthur, who sits on the committee, said today, "It's clear that it is now widely accepted that a referendum on becoming an independent country must happen. We welcome the fact that all parties who sit on the committee have joined to endorse the principles of the referendum's bill and to progress the debate on Scotland's future in light of the Brexit mess." So, Dave, what do we make of this? I think you were initially surprised today by this news. Why were you surprised?
Because usually the Tories don't agree with anything that the rest of Holyrood says.
So you think they would normally have automatically raised objections or vetoed such a thing?
Yes, that's what they normally do. So
what conclusion do you think we can draw from this then? Do you think the Tories have actually given up trying to fight independence?
I doubt that. I don't know why they've done. Do you know why they've done it?
I can't speak for the Conservatives. I do know that the thing that's actually important, I think, in this announcement today is the fact that they've joined to endorse the principles of a referendum's bill, but with whatever amendments have to be made, there is some kind of caveat being put on this. So there is obviously a process to go through where they may amend it based on information that they receive. Presumably that will be from the Electoral Commission, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, the Electoral Commission, I understand, has said that it is currently happy with the question as it was in 2014, and would evaluate it again if it is put forward. But I believe that I believe the Conservatives have raised objections and are suggesting that there might be a change to the question.
Right.
But it's now thought that that's not going to happen. Initially, it was thought that there would be a change of the wording from yes and no to independence to leave or remain, very much in the same vein as the
Brexit one.
But the problem is, if you say leave or remain, then people don't know exactly what it is that they're voting
they're leaving
for.
Or remain.
They don't know what they're leaving. And also, in terms of the European Union, of course, they didn't realise that we could leave the European Union originally. They didn't understand sometimes what they were leaving with Brexit.
Yes.
In this case, this is really not so much about leaving a union. This is about setting up an independent country.
Yes.
Very different thing. Pilar, you've been watching this from your end in Spain today. How is the news of this new development at Holyrood being the referendum's bill? How has it been received in Catalonia?
Well, hello. I'm in Santiago de Compostela, actually. I'm in Galicia, in the northwest of Spain. First of all, the big news here is Brexit is just stopped until the 31st of January. That's the big news. The other news is, of course, general elections in the United Kingdom. I don't think the referendum bill has any coverage here, because I think it's something new. the newspapers here are speaking about this second referendum of independence in Scotland, and the SNP putting on, because I think it's important. It is important. I think it is important what is happening in the Scottish Parliament, but I don't think either the Basque news or the Catalan news or the Spanish news are reporting on.
So you think that perhaps the news from the UK news media hasn't got as far as Spain yet, not about this particular development with the referendums bill?
Look, from my view, I think it's a blackout, a deliberate
a news blackout.
blackout.
We feel the same here,
issue,
in fact.
Because they want to present this second referendum as something similar to the Catalan case, and is obviously not the same as the Catalan case. And of course, the Catalan case is a mess right now. But I think the Scottish government is presenting this and is handling this issue in a way that probably in the future there will be no problems with that. Okay, I think it is a deliberate blackout in the UK media and also in the Spanish media, because we're having again a déjà vu what happened in 2013, 2014, when the Catalan case just exploded, and in Madrid they didn't handle well what was happening, a political issue with no solution, no political solution. They tried to put everyone in jail and to cut rights, but no, they didn't find, they haven't found a political solution.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to move on a little bit, Pilar, to actually news about Catalonia, which has reached us today, which is the stepping up of efforts to control independence groups and parties' activity on the internet. Spain's acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said on Thursday that his government would not allow Catalonia to seek online independence. And Sanchez faces a parliamentary election now on November the 10th himself, with much depending on how voters react to days of protests and some violent clashes with the Spanish police, which followed the jailing of 9 Catalan independence leaders this month. Opinion polls show that his Socialist Party is leading, but with fewer seats than in a previous election in April, in part because the right-wing parties received a boost from voters who were upset with the unrest in the wealthy northeastern region. Sanchez told Onda Cero Radio, "I'm telling the Catalan independence supporters there won't be independence either offline or online. The state of law will be as forcefully online as it is in the real world." The government today adopted a decree to oblige all public administrations to host their websites in the European Union. A move, he said, was aimed at putting an end to what he called the independence supporters' aim of a digital republic. So, Pilar, this is obviously not going to be news to you. So if I can bring you back in, Pilar, to comment on this. The move seems to be part of a very wide crackdown on the Catalan independence movement. How is it playing out there at the moment?
Well, Pedro Sanchez's statements are very serious and very alarming indeed, because he says the PSOE, the Socialist Party, will always look at the left, but apparently is working with the right wing. And it's very serious because it shows that it's ready to cut rights, fundamental rights. He's showing that he won't respect human and fundamental rights, so it's very serious. That's censorship. That's censorship. It has no name, no other name. It's very serious. Again, Pedro Sánchez is repeating the same strategy as Mariano Rajoy before.
Well, I know myself, Pilar, from
So
experience. Here in Scotland, we have similar problems with the media. I have a blog myself, which you might already know about, which was quite severely sabotaged last summer. And we still don't know who by, but it basically had to be given up when the new page started. And I understand from the news today that Carles Puigdemont has actually set up a new online council for the Catalan Republic, which he says has some 80,000 followers. Is that true?
I really don't know the details. I know there's websites that have been shut it down. And I know there's a lot of censorship myself. I suffer myself the censorship because I was sharing news and videos about the marches for freedom in Catalonia. And apparently my Facebook page, I had no problems until now, has been limited. I'm being punished because I'm a naughty girl and I'm being reporting on news.
I also understand, Pilar, that there is to be something called a democratic tsunami called on Thursday for the people to take to the streets on November the 9th on the eve of the parliamentary election. Is this also something that you've heard about? Are you not hearing me, Pilar? I think we may have lost sound. Pilar, I was just asking about people taking to the streets on November the 9th. I think we may have lost.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear very well what you're saying.
Okay, I think we're going to try and get Pilar back. She's lost. Okay, Pilar, let me try ask you the question again. We're hearing that democratic tsunami on Thursday called on people to take to the streets on November the 9th on the eve of the parliamentary election with the intention of disrupting the pre-election quiet day when no electoral events are allowed. I gather this is very similar to our period of purdah just before the voting day. So have you heard about this? Is this actually a thing, this democratic tsunami? It sounds like a new group.
Well, I think it's a citizens group, it's a new group, yes, but you have to understand that there's a lot of differences between different groups, in pro-Indy groups or pro-Indy parties, and there have been a lot of discussions on the strategy to follow, and now, of course, there's a breaking out between the popular movement and the citizens movement and the official organizations such as Esquerra Republicana and Junts per Catalunya. Yeah. And I think the lack of movement and a lack of strategy from the pro-Indy parties and the differences and the clashes between them have provoked that the citizens have to move in another way. For example, La Asamblea Nacional Catalana is calling, of course, for they are protesting. The people are protesting. It's very understandable that they are protesting. But the organizations, the parties have the control, they are not under control.
We're also hearing, Pilar, that Carles Puigdemont's party has included in its electoral programme a plan to create what they call a digital republic before there can be a real republic. I'm fascinated to know how a digital republic could be established. Do you know much about this?
Well, no, I don't pay a lot of attention on what Puigdemont is saying right now, because of course he needs to rise his situation because, as you know, he is facing charges. So he needs to keep his speech going.
Yeah.
But in reality, in Catalonia, I think people want another kind of strategy. It's not a digital way. It's not. This is.
It sounds like
it's just a smoke. It's a smoke screen. A smoke screen.
Yeah.
I don't think it is realistic. It's my view, of course. But if you see the popular movements, such as this CDR,
sounds,
for example,
Pilar, forgive me interrupting.
Assemblea Nacional Catalana, or others, they are trying to prepare some protests. They are protesting in a peaceful way, in a physical way, not in a digital way. Okay. And they have reasons, and they give reasons and arguments for their protests and for their future, because they want a strategy, but a credible strategy, not a digital one.
Pilar, listen, thank you very much for the detail you've managed to put on this for us. We're going to leave your story just now. We may call on you later on for some other comments. By the way, Pilar, many of us in the studio were wondering about the Halloween background in your little studio. And
yes.
Was that all of your own making?
Well, yes, I'm from Galicia. I'm a very Celtic lassie, and I'm following my Samhain celebrations. And today I'm celebrating the Samhain Halloween.
Yeah.
And I'm doing, like every year, my traditional oracle, and I'll be asking for the second referendum of independence. So keep an eye on my Twitter account, and that's it. Have a lovely and fantastic celebration of Halloween. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, Pilar, you're very welcome. Happy Halloween to you too in Catalonia. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Well, I'm amazed at just how widespread
Halloween
seems to be.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing. Pilar has a very similar sort of attitude to it as well. I never knew that.
Yes.
Anyway, we have to move on here, I suppose.
Yes.
The British election campaign is kicking off.
It isn't half.
Kicking off is the word,
Suddenly
isn't it?
the television studios are all about the election, and it's quite different from what we've been getting.
And it makes a change from the B word, doesn't it?
Yes.
So on the day that Britain was supposed to have left the European Union, voters instead faced the start of an election campaign with opposition Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn pledging to overthrow what he calls a rigged system that he said was run by billionaires and tax dodgers, something which is kind of hard for most of us working people to disagree with, I think. Mr. Corbyn named a prominent billionaires, so he wasn't pulling his punches today.
Duke of Westminster was one, apparently.
Yeah, Hugh Grosvenor,
Jim
Sports
Ratcliffe.
Direct owner Mike Ashley, Crispin O'Day. Oh, there's all sorts. Rupert Murdoch. So he's really having a go at the, what would you say, the elite media moguls here as well, who sees as a part of the establishment.
The O'Day one is the one who's making a fortune on hedge funds of the pound going up and down.
You think he's the one who's the disaster capitalist who's speculating?
He's the one that, or so Boris's sister says, that Boris has to keep this guy
happy,
content. Yeah.
Well, in his first speech of the campaign in London, Mr. Corbyn said the election was, and I quote, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to overthrow what he cast as a corrupt elite, which profited by exploiting the workers and lying to the public and polluting the environment. You would almost think that he was actually goading the Scots with these words, wouldn't you? That he's picked this phrase once in a generation on purpose.
No, I just think he is so naive.
You think he really didn't think about the words before he wrote the speech?
Yeah, because they're now bandied about by all parties. I've heard the Tories using that phrase as well.
Once in a generation.
But they're so full of themselves. They're so arrogant that they don't realise that those words will come back to bite them the way they have been biting at the Scots and Alex Salmond for saying that.
The thing I noticed, I don't know about you, Dave, from watching the parliamentary broadcasts, is when Joanna Cherry gets up to speak, have a look at Boris Johnson's
Yes.
expressions, because he just has such a sour look, because he's obviously
No
being
wonder.
exposed. And I've always found Joanna Cherry to be a wonderful
She's amazing.
person for eviscerating her opponents in the most polite manner I have ever heard.
Calm, quiet.
So she really is pretty
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Anyway, after failing to deliver Brexit by the October the 31st deadline, after the Prime Minister said that he would rather be dead in a
He
ditch.
promised us he would be dead in a
Yes,
ditch.
a number of people have apparently been buying shovels recently. He has called the general election for December the 12th to break what he cast as a political paralysis, which had thwarted Britain's departure and undermined confidence in the economy. Now, you've got to wonder, a Prime Minister who was in favour of the very thing that he's now complaining about, paralysing the economy, how he can justify that stance now. Is he just trying to blame everyone else?
Yeah, yeah.
According to Ipsos Mori and YouGov opinion polls, these suggest that the Conservative Party is leading Labour by 15 to 17 percentage points. However, the overshadowing issue of Brexit, which has divided both major parties and their voters, which could confound conventional calculations. So Brexit is the spoiler in this. And it seems to be the acid that eats through every political campaign at the moment.
Yes.
Labour's pledging to hold a second referendum on Brexit, and is being fought by the two British politicians who offer starkly different visions for the world's supposedly fifth largest economy. So what do you make of Jeremy Corbyn's offer of another referendum on a deal which he's planning to renegotiate within 6 months? With apparently with no deal, with repealing the Brexit Article 50 on the table as well. So there's the option of staying on the referendum ballot paper. Do you think this will fly with voters?
I honestly don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think
too
Jeremy
close to
Corbyn
call.
knows.
I think it's just a colossal roll of the dice now.
It's just unbelievable what's being thrown in the air.
There have been, obviously, two historic referendums recently. The Scottish referendum in 2014 and Brexit in 2016, very, very close together. Very different campaigns, though.
Totally different.
A very one-sided campaign in 2014 where the entire British press
Yes.
and all of the British television
Yes.
stations and all of the British parties were basically standing against Scotland, which had nothing,
Yeah.
had no way to fight it.
Yeah.
And not surprisingly, we lost. And then 2016,
Not to mention the dark money.
of course, which we may come back to in another programme and do an
Hopefully.
investigation on later, I think. Under Theresa May, the Conservatives had been polling at 50%, double that of Labour, and of course she took the chance of trying to increase her majority. But she failed and lost the majority in Parliament, and eventually winning just under 2% of the vote share, greater than Labour. So it was such a tiny margin that she couldn't maintain a mandate to govern, barely.
Yeah, yeah.
Johnson, who's failed to deliver his do-or-die promise to Britain that we would leave the EU on the 31st of October, is pitching the election as a chance to get Brexit done. Do you know, he characterised it today in a hospital as an oven-ready meal, which he was going to slam in the microwave to get it done. I actually heard that on the way in on the radio this evening. He has denied that he has any intentions of doing a trade deal which would involve selling part of the NHS to American companies as part of a deal with the United States President Donald Trump. Back Boris for more NHS funding seems to be his campaigning slogan. That must ring very hollow with members of the NHS staff at the moment. I've heard a number of doctors and others coming out today in the press saying how false the impression was that was given in various news conferences. He said when asked whether the Prime Minister would be apologising for failing to deliver on his promise that the country would leave the EU on the 31st of October, the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, had told the Today programme, I think most people listening to this are thinking, actually, it's quite clearly Parliament that has failed to deliver it. Again, the Conservatives trying to deflect the blame onto the people who are really just trying to make sure this is done properly.
Yes.
Instead of being rushed through
Yes.
without any thought to the consequences. Now, there's also a further story today about Boris Johnson being accused of withholding a key report on Russia from voters. And Boris has been accused of preventing the publication of a report which assessed the security threat posed by Russia to the UK and whether a future general election could be affected by Kremlin-sponsored disinformation. And now, Dominic Grieve, the man behind the power at number 10, the famous
Not
SPAD.
Dominic Grieve.
I beg your pardon. I'm thinking of Dominic Cummings. I do apologise. Sorry. Too many Dominics. Dominic Grieve, I do apologise for my mistake, has told MPs that the Russian dossier prepared by the Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee had been held up, awaiting final security clearance from Downing Street since October 17th. The MP who chairs the committee said it was unacceptable for the Prime Minister to sit on it and warned that there was a risk that the report may not be published at all before the election on the 12th of December. Raising a point of order in the House of Commons, Graves said that the committee should have been given clearance to publish by Thursday so the report could be released on Monday before Parliament dissolves on Tuesday. If the clearance is not given by number 10 before the dissolution, it will not be possible to publish the report until after the election, and no explanation for the apparent delay has been offered. So what is in this report that Boris is worried shouldn't get out before the election? Has there been election interference by Russian state actors on the internet? We know that there have been large cyber attacks by Russian cyber spooks. I think you would call them cyber spies.
Yes.
He's gone on to say, this is still Dominic Grieve, that we produced a report which, in accordance with the Justice and Security Act, we sent to the Prime Minister on the 17th of October for him to confirm that there were no classified matters remaining. And there ought to be none, because it's already been carefully looked at by the Cabinet Office. That confirmation should have been received by today, thus enabling the publication before the House is dissolved. But this has not happened. So it looks very much that they're trying to hide some bad news here.
I think so, yes.
Must be something damaging to the Conservatives' case.
To hide it. But
and you mentioned dark money earlier on.
I did.
What were you thinking of when you were speaking of dark money? I'm
thinking way back, way further than that, when I was on the local action group for Forth Valley and Lomond Leader. And it was just at the very start. And I was in the wee group that was set up to get a website up and running with the funding that you get from the EU. And we had 3 companies in the bidding for it, one of which turned out to be the winner against my wishes, but I was flattened, and it was a Russian developer. Well, no, the developer wasn't Russian, but he was subletting it, or whatever you do, and all the work was done in Russia. Now that would be back 2010 maybe, 2009.
So this was Russian money going into buying.
Well, it just
Scottish
occurred
land?
to me that this is leader money that's supposed to be going into Scotland in the local community to help to link and support local firms.
Yeah.
And we actually had, they were Scottish firms that were bidding, but this other firm was an international firm,
Right.
and it was giving its work to people in Russia to work on the program.
Right.
Well, that was way back then.
So
So imagine
something-
if this was the norm, if this is going on right throughout our country, and you've got people in Russia who know exactly what's going on.
Well, there's no
Moles.
question that there's a lot of Russian money being pumped into property in
Yes.
London, particularly in the southeast.
Yes.
But as far as I understand it, both Russian money, Chinese money, and Saudi
all money
Arabian
laundering.
money from the Middle East is being pumped into all kinds of land transactions all over the UK.
Yes, which is why the EU are bringing in this new regulation
To
and
look
why
at.
Boris was so desperate to get out.
Well, it could be that buying land in the UK is a way of laundering money. Is
It
another
is.
possibility.
Yeah.
And also, we do know that dark money was funneled through a rather unofficial and strange organisation in Northern Ireland with
Yes.
links to far-right
Because
unionism.
they don't have to
and through a
proclaim where
Conservative-
their money
yeah.
came from.
And money came through the deputy leader of the Scottish Conservatives
Yes.
account and was funneled to
Yeah.
the Leave campaign.
Yes.
So that there's been a lot of this. And I think, we could probably do a whole programme just on this subject
Yes.
eventually. However, we do need to move on this evening
Yeah.
and to the next story, which is regarding Diane Abbott, who has spoken out about online abuse as female MPs step down. Diane Abbott has spoken about how she deals with online vitriol after a growing number of female MPs announced that they would not be standing in the general election, with some citing the abuse that they faced in public office. The Shadow Home Secretary, who was found by a study to be subject to nearly half the abusive tweets sent to female MPs, said that she coped with it by putting one foot in front of the other. Diane Abbott wants social media companies to record the real identities of people using their platforms in order to tackle the problem. She was speaking after the Cabinet Minister, Nicky Morgan, said that she would not be standing as a candidate, with one of her reasons being the abuse that she received. For some reason, Diane Abbott seems to be a target for more abuse than almost any other female MP I've ever seen. I'm not sure whether this is a combination of her ethnic background as well as the fact that she's female. But she seems to be absolutely under constant bombardment from quite unpleasant, nasty threats.
Yeah, embarrassingly so.
And these are coming from, I would have to say, cowardly people who are not prepared to put their real names to the kind of comments they're making. When asked about online abuse, Diane Abbott told BBC Radio 4's Today programme, a lot of people try to make party political points or factual points about this. But what I say is that the huge rise in online abuse, and obviously it's addressed more to women than men, than anybody else, has to do with the anonymity online. And my view is that we should make it harder for people to be anonymous online.
Yes.
And I think I get subject to abuse on a fairly regular basis as well. But thankfully, like a lot of people who have video blogs online, we simply block them and ban them from the page.
Yes.
And so we never see the troll accounts ever again. But frequently our followers do, and we can actually follow them having arguments with the trolls
With the same,
who are trying to
yes.
insult us.
Yes.
So obviously there is a way to get round this, which is to
Yes.
block these accounts.
Yes. Yes.
The problem is they can use multiple accounts. And
Yeah. But
something which Facebook really and other
you think it should be
platforms need to
simple to
address.
make sure that people put their names on their Twitter profile.
It-
I've got my name on, but funnily enough, it could be that I don't get quite so much abuse. A, because I block anything that I think is abusive
Yeah.
immediately. I just don't go there. But B, because Day looks a bit like Dave.
Oh, I see.
And a lot of people have assumed that I'm a man. Even though my picture is there, and I don't think I'm that manly looking.
Well, a lot of men put up their girlfriends or wives' photographs as their profile
yes, that's
pictures.
true.
Yeah, I don't know why they do that.
Or
It's
their
either that or
children.
dogs or cats.
Yes,
But
yes.
it certainly is strange. The Liberal Democrat MP, Sarah Wollaston, who defected from the Tories, said she disagreed with Mr Cleverly's analysis. Now, the Conservative Party chairman, James Cleverly, said, he appeared to downplay the issue as he retweeted Conservative commentator Tom Harwood's remarks about the proportion of female MPs standing down. But Sarah Wollaston has said that if you look at the 9 Conservative women who are standing down, who are part of the 2017 women elected to the Conservative Party, 5 of them are aged 50 or under. But 2 of them, so I find this in this large document here, but 2 of them, 2 of the 20 men, it says, are 50 or under. So there's a difference in terms of the age breakdown as well.
Yes.
So if you
Is
look
there a
at,
difference in parties, or are they all Conservative?
I don't think it's just the Conservative Party. I mean, Diane Abbott is a Labour MP, and
But she's not standing down, is she?
she's not. Diane Abbott has a lot of guts. She takes.
But of the ones that are standing down, are the majority of
They're
the
very
women
much more
not?
new politicians
Yes.
who didn't expect to get the vitriol that
Possibly,
they've
but
received.
also if they're Conservative, perhaps they're going to lose their seats anyway.
It could well be that they're not looking forward to the election at all anyway,
Yeah,
and perhaps
yeah.
don't want to put themselves through it. Anyway, we're going to move on from the election to Pakistan. And I'm afraid this is extremely bad news today coming from Pakistan, as fire swept through a Pakistani train on Thursday, killing 73 people and injuring nearly 40 after a gas canister that passengers were using to cook breakfast exploded, the Minister of Railways has said. The fire destroyed 3 of the train's carriages near the town of Ramin Yarkhan in the south of Punjab province. It was on its way to Rawalpindi, near the capital, from the southern city of Karachi, with many people travelling to a religious gathering. So possibly the worst possible thing that can happen to anybody is to be going on a religious festival and have such a terrifying or terrible tragedy occur on the way. These 2 stoves blew up when people were cooking breakfast. The presence of kerosene with the passengers in the moving train further spread the fire, according to the Minister of Railways, Sheikh Rashid Ahmed, who told Geo Television. Many of the dead were killed when they leapt from the moving train to escape the flames, he said. People had apparently pulled the communication cord quite late, and according to eyewitnesses, it was extremely difficult to get off the train. I imagine that knowing the Pakistani railway system as it is, there'll probably be people standing on the roof.
As well.
They're often overloaded,
Yeah.
and there is very little oversight about what goes on board these trains.
Yeah.
It says that people sneaking stoves onto trains to prepare meals on long journeys is a common problem, the minister said. Shortly before the fire broke out, a conductor had ordered some passengers to stop cooking, but they had ignored him. Several survivors questioned whether the fire was sparked by a cooking accident or telling the media they believed the cause was a short circuit in the train's electrical system. The television pictures showed the fire and black smoke pouring from the train's windows after it came to a stop. People were jumping off, some of them on fire, said a witness. So obviously it's a horrible spectacle for anyone to witness.
Yeah.
We understand that about 130 people were killed in a previous accident in 2005 when a train rammed another at a station in Sindh province, and a third train hit the wreckage. So they have a very poor record for safety
Yes.
in Pakistan. Anyway, moving now to America. Donald Trump's impeachment has now moved a step closer. The deeply divided US House of Representatives took a major step in the effort to impeach President Donald Trump on Thursday when lawmakers approved rules for the next stage, including public hearings. In the Democratic-led inquiry into Trump's attempt to have the Ukraine investigation a domestic political rival. In the first formal test of support for the impeachment investigation, the Democratic-controlled House voted almost entirely along party political lines, 232 to 196, to move the probe forward in Congress, which could damage Trump ahead of the 2020 presidential elections. Now, as far as we know, this is the first time they've really seriously escalated this impeachment process.
Yes.
And it is now moved into a completely different area of the political domain in America. And there's now a very real possibility that Donald Trump will be fighting for his political life, his presidency, before he even actually has to fight an election campaign.
So it's actually worse than just being a bit of a problem, because it's not what you want to hear when you're starting up a campaign. So there's obviously gone up a scale.
Well, I've just been told that we have Drew Henry, SNP MP, on the line just now. Welcome to the programme, Drew.
Good evening.
Have you been following events regarding Donald Trump's impeachment? And if so, what do you make of it?
I'm having a wee bit of difficulty hearing you there. It was,
well, we're going to try and improve the sound quality for you. Can you hear us a little better now?
Well, I can hear the sound engineer better than you.
Okay, well, I'll try and speak up a little bit. But
that's better.
We were looking for your comments on the movement of the House of Representatives to impeach Donald Trump.
Well, I think I think it's pretty common knowledge that I don't have a lot of time for Donald Trump. I think some of the things that he's been doing over the past few years have been reprehensible. I've been following what's been happening with the impeachment process, and it does.
And Drew, what do you think this business of using Vladimir Zelensky, the president of another country? I mean, he's the president of Ukraine, to actually dig some dirt on a political rival. I'm sorry, did you catch the question there, Drew? We had a break in transmission.
No, if you could repeat it, I'll get that.
Okay, we were talking about how allegedly Trump has used his connections to the Ukrainian president, Vladimir Zelensky, to try and dig some dirt on his rival, Joe Biden, and how this is a step too far as the Americans are concerned.
Well, it should be a step too far for anybody to employ, or to seek to employ a foreign government to dig up dirt on a domestic political rival is clearly unacceptable in anybody's book. And, it just seems to be another one of the things that Donald Trump deems to be acceptable for him to do in his administration to carry out, and I hope very much he's called out on it.
Well, according to the news that we're seeing from the United States, if the House eventually votes to impeach Donald Trump, it would set up a trial in the Republican-controlled Senate, and Trump would not be removed from office unless votes to convict him by a 2/3 margin, something which looks rather unlikely, as congressional Republicans have been reluctant to move against the president. What are the chances, do you think, that his own party might move to impeach him? It sounds like an impossible task or an impossible ask for his own party to remove him.
I know a number of these elected Republicans in the House there are upset about this story, and there may be one or two who might go against them. But by and large, I think it's likely that the Republican Party will close ranks on this issue. I think what is important, though, is that while this is exposed, it's during what's going to be the coming election period for the president, and he'll have to go through the election with all of this baggage.
Yeah, so it's obviously not good for Mr. Trump. Day, in the studio here, you've heard most of what's been said here this evening about Mr. Trump. I got the impression, and this is perhaps just my own understanding, this is the kind of tactic that Donald Trump might have used when he was a businessman, perhaps to undermine his business opponent, or perhaps when he was trying for a hostile takeover or something like that, to get some dirt on the opposition. But he seems to think that it's appropriate here. What are your views on this? Is all fair in love and politics, or is there a step too far?
Absolutely not. And that's why we're all in this situation, because Trump's baby is Boris Johnson, and he has no morals either. You know, there is a moral deficit for both these people.
Well, certainly Donald Trump has a deficit of something.
Yeah.
We're actually moving back closer to home now, and looking at the way the Scottish Government is now supporting the fishing industry. Now, I'm having to skip through a few of our earlier stories this evening to get to this one, so forgive me for a moment while we find the story. But it's news today that the Scottish Government... Okay, here we go. I think we found the story. Now,
£1 million.
Yeah, £1.1 million worth of funding to improve the safety of the fishing industry. Now, I can't think of a job or a task that's possibly as hazardous as being a trawlerman or a fisherman, or a fisherwoman, I suppose we could say now. And so the money that the Scottish Government is bringing to the industry is aimed to reduce the number of accidents and lives lost at sea through a range of actions, including improved health and safety training and paying for more personal locator beacons. Now, the personal locator beacons, I think, are used largely by North Sea oil workers.
Right.
So in the case of somebody falling into the sea, they carry a tracking beacon which has a light and also has a radio transponder, and in some cases a satellite uplink, so the person can be located quickly. something which, if you're on a fishing boat and you fall over the side, would be vital.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's actually required for boats over a certain size. According to this announcement today, it would also help to fund a program called Smart Trawl, a technology that reduces the discard by allowing more selective trawling, and will contribute towards gathering data that will inform future fishing negotiations. So this is a way, I think, of being smarter about fishing.
This is a really good news story.
You
because
think?
Yes, I do, because you don't hear normally anything about the fishing industry other than that
They catch fish and that's it.
They catch fish, and we're only just beginning to understand that the fishing industry is very diverse.
Yeah.
And you've got the pelagic fleets with the 5 big fishing
So
families.
these are the boats that go outside our territorial
Yes,
waters to
yes,
fish
and
in the
they-
deep water.
They could afford to buy the quota.
Yeah.
But equally, they had to invest that money because they needed to go further out. So
So
they
more-
needed
more
bigger
fuel.
boats.
Yeah, they're away for
So,
longer.
You know, we can slag off the fact that these 5 fishing families own it, but they were the ones that risked buying.
They put the investment in the first place.
Yes. But then you've also got the high-end,
Okay.
on the West Coast,
Yes,
producing
yes, that's true.
the scallops and the prawns.
This is actually mentioned, I believe, in here as well, that the package will do something to support West Coast fishing as
Yes.
well. According to, let me see, to Fergus Ewing, Scotland produces the best seafood found anywhere in the world, and many coastal communities depend on our fishing industry.
Yeah.
But there have been too many accidents over the years and too many lives
Yes.
lost at sea.
It's like farming.
Yeah. There's often serious
Yeah,
accidents because
yeah.
of the nature of the machinery.
Yes.
Do you think
because
that,
a lot of them are working on their own on the
oh,
West
of
Coast.
course, and so they don't have any backup if
That's
anything
right.
happens.
Yes, yes.
According to Mr. Ewing, he's determined to do something about that.
Good.
Now, Drew, I know you're listening in here to this conversation that I'm having with Day, who's effectively a farmer, aren't you? Day? You're
Yes.
an experienced farmer. Drew, what do you
Well-known
think?
one too.
Drew, how do you think this will change Scotland's fishing industry for the better? What will it do that will make things so much better for the fishermen?
Yeah, well, I think the fact it adds a layer of protection and safety, and I think it demonstrates once more, because I can give you a contrasting situation here, but it demonstrates once more the Scottish Government stepping in to use the limited powers that they've got to help people in this country. The contrast I wanted to give you is that when I was on Highland Council before I was elected as an MP, we'd had a long-running campaign to get the UK government to reinstate the second tugboat that used to patrol the waters of the West Coast. And of course, after all these years, they've still ignored that. There's been frequent running agrounds and other incidents around the West Coast, but we've been exceptionally fortunate. There has been a major incident there over the past number of years, and despite the pleading of all of the councils, all of the agencies around that coast, the UK government have just ignored that over these years. So I'm delighted that Fergus Ewing has announced this initiative today, and I think it will greatly help.
Yeah, I often get the feeling that that fishing, like farming, is a sort of Cinderella industry, that it never seems to get any decent funding from anywhere. And it survives largely by its own wits and the courage and determination of the people who do it.
Well,
So
I think you'd have a lot of the general public disagreeing with that.
You think so? You think they have an easy
because
life?
we're subsidy junkies, aren't we?
Well, possibly, but still, it doesn't make the job any easier, I guess. I think the thing which stood out for me, Drew, and I don't know whether you agree with me here, is that the way that it selectively looks at certain species of fish allows the fishermen to catch a particular size and species of fish and make sure that they don't discard so many dead fish, which is obviously going to affect the numbers in future. So they're really trying to preserve the fish stocks for future generations of Scottish fishermen. And I think, if nothing else, this is remarkable for being able to do that, if nothing else.
Yeah. And the fact
the data is clearly absolutely vital to make sure that we can maintain quantity and quality into the future. Our food exports, seafood exports from Scotland are world-renowned for their quality, but we need to make sure that the species are protected as much as we possibly can in order to make sure that can continue into the future, and there is a viable industry there.
Yeah, and the fact that this money is coming to them to improve their smartness, it costs money to invest in new net sizes, which will allow the smaller fish to go through. That's all capital investment, that if you're a small fisherman, you maybe don't have that money to invest.
You don't have the capital
just
funds
like
to
some
do it.
farmers, they need to be able to reinvest in their businesses, and the money's very welcome.
I'm also guessing that this particular initiative sits very well within the common fisheries policy of the European Union, because they are were very concerned to preserve fish stocks, as well as obviously making the fisherman's job a little safer.
Yes.
Have we heard anything at all from the European Union on this announcement yet?
Well, I haven't heard anything, but again, I would reflect on the fact that we've just come back from Westminster, where Boris Johnson's been trying to put through his deal, which would allow fishermen that are fishing from Northern Ireland at the moment to maintain their relationship with the single market and the customs union. But of course, in the West Coast, using the same type of boats, fishing the same type of fish, our fishermen would be put at a disadvantage to those fishermen. So, you know, I think the EU is very important. It's why it's vital that we are able to stay in the EU. But of course, the common fisheries policy has been, on a wider basis for the Scottish fishermen, unacceptable in its present form. Of course, that was traded away by the UK government back in 1974. That was the arrangements that they made then. I think what we need to do is see an independent Scotland in future, making sure that we've got a completely different deal that suits all of the fishermen around all of our coasts.
Well, thank you for your comments on this item. I think this is such an interesting topic because it dovetails a little bit, Dave, with your area of expertise, which is, as you say, farmers like fishermen working alone often in poor conditions and so forth.
Yes.
But the Conservative Party claiming that they've given over £200 million in aid.
Makes me so angry.
I guess that you disagree with what the Tories are saying there.
Again, it's just out and out lies that this is new money.
Where does it come
2000
from?
was it 6 years ago that because we got so little money to bring us up to the EU average, we were at the bottom there. So the EU awarded the member state, which is the UK, and trusted that they would distribute it to the people that had the least.
And it hasn't happened,
they didn't.
So the marginal hill farmers and crofters have nothing.
Well, not just the marginal ones. The ones who are putting most into their farms and getting not so much. They're on an unlevel playing field.
Drew, what's your reaction to this? I mean, you can look at this from the Westminster sort of end of the telescope. How is it even possible to fight this kind of battle with the Tories when they say one thing about funding farmers and they do something completely different, or in fact they do nothing?
This is an incredible case of brass neck. We're talking about fishing earlier, so brass neck as big as a ship's bell. This one. This is £160 million that should have come to Scottish farmers 6 years ago. Fergus Ewing, by the way, you mentioned him earlier on what he was doing with that new initiative. He's been an absolute star in chasing this money down from the UK government. But we've been raising it repeatedly in Parliament, I think over 50 or 60 times, if I remember correctly. Michael Gove famously said that this money had been spent, and lo and behold, you know, they've had to try and kind of manufacture this back into the system in order to give a bit of a something to the Scottish Tory MPs. But this is money that was due to come to Scottish farmers, that was overdue to them, and we've had to hunt it down to get it paid to them in the end.
Yesterday, we also heard Boris Johnson making a not very veiled threat about removing the power that the Scottish Government and the Scottish Parliament has over the Scottish NHS. It seemed a remarkable assertion to make that he would just remove that power and claim that the Scottish NHS, which is outperforming every other part of the National Health Service in the UK, is somehow being mismanaged. I mean, how on earth can you respond to that?
Well, I think it's typical of the state of play within Westminster at the moment, particularly within Boris Johnson's Tory party. They don't even respect the democracy of the House of Commons. So the fact that they might respect the Scottish Parliament and our rights for our Parliament is clearly not one that they want to hold dear in any way at all. The Tories, make no mistake about it, the Tories, and they've said this many times in many debates, would pretty much like to tear up the devolution agreement. But that doesn't mean that they would then pay any attention to Scotland. I think it just means that we'd be in an even more parlous state of affairs in the future. But that was a slip, but I think it betrayed exactly his thinking and exactly their thinking about how little Scotland means to them.
Do you think that, I mean, we have heard an awful lot of rumours, particularly amongst independent supporters online, that Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party in general, if they win this general election and they succeed in taking us out of the European Union on the 31st of December or January, whenever it is, that he has plans to strip the Scottish Parliament, the Scottish Government, of its powers and basically to take over the running of Scotland. They've already made threats. I believe Michael Gove made a threat that he would fund directly a lot of Scottish local councils. Is there any credibility given to these threats at all, or are they just rumours?
Well, I think it's a clear danger that we have to be very, very wary about. But we'll be fighting tooth and nail to make sure that he gets his hands off Scotland's powers. That we've got the election coming up just now, and we intend to do everything we can to kick Boris Johnson out of power and his Tory government and remove that threat from the future. The fact of the matter is that far better course of action, and I know many will agree with me on this programme, that is to have our own independence and be able to make our own choices for this country in the future without the threat of these things being taken away, without the threat of monies being held back from us, and without threats of our resources being drained with no return.
I think to finish off this evening, I think it's interesting to hear everything that you've said about this matter. But we're now faced with the prospect of fighting a general election through the winter months, and often in places in the Highlands of Scotland, which I'm sure you'll know, the weather can be absolutely awful up there.
It can be
How
awful
on
in Stirling too.
How on earth do you fight an election campaign in a country the size of Scotland, with the mountains, the lochs, the bad roads, and poor weather? How on earth are we going to do it?
Well, we'll do it with the way we've always done it, with the support of lots of our SNP volunteers out in the streets. I think what's important to remember is when I became a candidate back in late 2014, we were out knocking doors. It was at the very beginning of 2015. We were out knocking doors in January anyway then, so we're no stranger to this kind of challenge. Clearly, it'd be better to do it on a sunny night or when it's warm or whatever. And clearly, some people will not want to answer the doors when it's dark. But we'll make sure we get round the streets. We'll knock every single door that we can get to, and we'll get every single vote out that we can muster.
Well, perhaps instead of having a campaign bus like the Conservatives, you could have a campaign snowplough. And you could have the SNP ploughing their way to independence. Something like that, anyway. We're almost out of time. I would just like to thank you for joining us this evening on Skype. Thank you very much for all your comments.
Pleasure.
And we appreciate you taking the time out to speak to us this evening. Dave, thank you again also for bringing some much-needed rural sanity to the discussions this evening. As everybody knows, when it comes to the end of this programme, I always say the same words, but it does cost money to make television programmes. And of course, we rely on the generosity of our viewers to become supporters. Now, we have also got subscribers. There is a difference. A supporter is somebody who shells out £5 a month and does so as somebody who supports financially. And you can do so for just £5 a month. And for that, you get 6 days of output from your very own Scottish independent television provider. Details of how to become a supporter are on your screens just now. It's coming up for 8 o'clock now, so I'm going to sign off, but thank you all for viewing. By the way, I've just been reminded to say to you, the more money that we can get on a monthly basis, the more programmes we can produce and the more varied the programmes we can produce. So please, it is always free to air. You can watch our programming at any time. It is entirely voluntary if you wish to become a supporter. But I think it will become more important as the campaign for independence steps up. And we will be doing election programmes throughout the 6-week period. And also we'll be doing a live election count programme, so there is a lot to look forward to. Anyway, from all of us here at Broadcasting Scotland and from a very busy Scotland at 7 team this evening, thank you for watching. Good.